It comments came from kind of all across the state. One that you probably have heard of on the Say Anything blog by Rob Port. The comment was made, that front page was sensationalism, pure and simple, as evidenced by the fact that the forum was flogging digital images of it on social media before it was even published. Even certain forum newspaper employees admitted to me, this is Rob now, saying that the paper was basically trolling the state. And he has a quote from an employee. As an employee of FCC, it's all about shock value now, said this employee who will remain anonymous for obvious reasons. They want TMZ-style clicks. That's what's going to pay the bills in the future, and what's worse is they're probably right. We all know there's a balance. You need to be getting attention with whatever you're doing in the media, but how do you respond to that, especially coming from someone who would claim to be an inside source?
Yeah, well, I don't know who Rob Port's inside source is, but you know, I was at that news huddle, and you know, we discussed, like I said, pure and simple. We thought people on both sides of this issue wanted to know how legislators voted. We heard from also many people who said that, you know, they were really thankful that we put in the people who voted yes to this bill too, because if they disagreed with them, they want to know who that is. They want to know who their legislators are that are voting for this. So, you know, it was pure objective information. The fact that we put it out front and that some, including bloggers out there, thought that this was meant to sensationalize the issue, I don't think it was. We thought it was an important vote. We thought people would want to know about it. And no matter which side of the, you know, the issue you're on, we think that's valuable information for people.
But you can see how people might come to that conclusion when the photos of those who voted against were displayed in the way it was on the front page.
Again, all of them, all of the people who voted on that bill were on the front page, whether they voted for it or against it. So, you know, I think that proves that we were trying to give people objective information. We don't think that how a legislator votes is something that should be shrouded in secrecy. We think that's an important part of, you know, it's part of knowing the voting record of people.
But that issue,
Yep.
seems to get a little more attention than. In fact, I had asked my Facebook page any questions for Matt, and one of them said, "Why is it all gay all the time?" And there is a perception that the gay issues tend to be front and center and front page and get a little more attention in the forum. Is that unfair?
I think it's unfair. I mean, I think this is an issue that's much broader than even where we live. It's a debate that's happening everywhere in the country right now. Time magazine just devoted its whole last issue to this debate. It is the social issue, I think, being discussed right now across the nation. Whether you agree with it or not, you know, doesn't matter to me. But the fact that people are debating this, and then the fact that it is sort of a divisive issue, we think, you know, to make sure that people here understand what is going on, how that issue is playing out in the halls of the Capitol, and frankly, how people are voting on this issue is important news.
Why this issue? How do you decide that this one is the issue that you highlight as a vote? For instance, last session there was historic legislation on pro-life issues that really garnered some attention for North Dakota nationwide as being one of the first states to put protection all these places for unborn children. Well, there wasn't, for instance, a similar front page of the forum to say, hey, these folks voted yes, these folks voted no.
Sure, and there probably could have. I'm not saying that was right or wrong. You know, we routinely do we call them how they voted sections of the paper when there's significant votes. Frankly, this session, other than the surge bill, there hasn't been any really large votes. There probably will be the next couple weeks on certain things, but we have found over time that the social issues, the ones that people most discuss, not so much funding issues, although those sometimes happen, but certainly social issues like abortion or gay rights or things like that, where people definitely have an opinion on them. We find that people want to know mostly about how their legislators voted on those particular issues.
Mike asked the question, and again, it goes to that issue, but he said, ask him if he has apologized to the elected citizens of our state legislature for endangering their lives by printing their photos on the front page above the fold during this LGBT hysteria. Yeah. Did you get any specific reaction from legislators themselves?
You know, we heard from a few legislators. Actually, the ones that we heard from and the ones that our Capitol correspondent Mike Nowatzki talked to the day that this page ran, they were all very pleased with it. according to the ones we heard from. They said, look, I voted what I believe my constituents believe. I have nothing to hide. I support what I did. They're not running from this. And that's what I think is important to understand, is that we haven't heard from not one legislator who has said, we think this is an unfair treatment of what we did here. I think they stand by their vote, and they have no problem with their districts knowing how they voted.
Is the fact that we're having this discussion a good thing? I mean, you wrote a column about this as a follow-up, defending it, saying, hey, here's why we did it. And, we're chatting about it here on the air, and it's obviously caused a little bit of controversy. Is that good? Going back to the quote that Steve read from the blog of supposedly a Forum Communications employee saying, hey, that's what it's all about, right? We want that sort of in your face, get some attention. Is that part of the game?
I think, our goal is to remain neutral on these issues, but certainly our name, as the newspaper's name connotes, I mean, we are the forum. We want to be the forum for community discussion, whether that's from straightforward news or whether it's through the opinions that run in our paper. We want our venue to be one of discussion.
Did you give any thought to putting the photos of the folks who voted on the other side of it above the fold? Did you give any thought to maybe we'll do it the other way instead?
We did. And the fact that what was being discussed here was this was a vote to extend protections to gays. Okay, that's important to keep in mind. The fact that it was voted down, the fact that those the extension of rights, if you will, was voted down, we thought that it was important that the ones who voted against it were above the fold, and those who voted, for it were below the fold.
I would argue that's a loaded, even the headline that North Dakota denies protection for gays, because the argument was, have you demostrated a need for protection?
Sure.
No.
And I've
special protection might be more accurate than protection.
I have heard that claim that the headline in and of itself, North Dakota denies protection for gays, was loaded, as you say. But I would argue against that, because this was a bill to extend rights, if you will.
Special protections. Special rights.
So the fact that, there's nothing subjective about that headline whatsoever. That is what happened. That is, they were voting whether to extend further protections for gays. So the fact that it was voted down, that's what happened. They voted against it. They voted to deny those protections.
Yeah, I hear you. I think you could argue this all day long.
You could.
Because you'd say, well, that denotes then that there's protections needed, and since that wasn't demonstrated and there wasn't a case made for it, not to mention the whole Pandora's box of what it would open up, i.e., Indiana and other things in the way of lawsuits.
Right, and like I said, we've heard those same claims. That we've heard people. I took some calls and some emails of people that said, why didn't the headline say North Dakota votes to protect its citizenry, or votes to uphold the rights of the majority, or whatever. We've heard all those kind of things, but I stand by the headline. I stand by the treatment. I think it was completely accurate. And like I said in my column from a couple Sundays ago, I think that people looked at that page and they looked at that headline through their own lens. I think that's how people often look at the news. Whatever your opinion is on it, you take that and you sort of project it onto the news. We are the messenger. We chose to put the votes out there.
Yeah, the public does that, and you all do too.
We wanted people to see. We wanted people to see how people voted, and we don't think there's anything wrong with that.
That sounds to me like you're essentially, saying it a different way, but agreeing with this anonymous quote from a forum employee that this is about, a forum that, his term was shock value. Your term was get the discussion going.
Well, I think it's kind of funny that, the idea of shock value. This is a vote in the halls of our legislature. That's all it is. It's a vote. And if that's shocking to people, how people voted, then so be it. But it's not, there's nothing shocking, in my opinion, about this front page. I can show you front pages that are shocking. This is pure, simple news information. However you choose to take that is up to you.
Well, I would define it as shock value only in the sense that it's very different. Right?
It is different.
You don't every day see a vote where people's, faces are plastered on the front page and say, here you go. Here's the ones that voted yes. Here's the ones that voted no.
And this is the reason, frankly, why it was so widely shared on social media is I think for the newspaper to to put the votes of its legislature on the front page was actually sort of a novel idea. I think a lot of people thought that, wow, I've never seen a vote, a roll call taken on the front page.
Another question from our audience had to be, why so much tabloid? The form looks more tabloid than it does. I don't know what that means. I guess
I don't know what that means either.
Other than, to me, a tabloid's the New York Post, right? It's kind of got a catchy headline and a photo on the front page. But
yeah, I mean, we're not we're not ashamed in any way of trying to engage readers. We think it's important to engage readers on the news, but to me, a tabloid, if you want to call it that, is something that where the headline is written to shock the reader or to make them step back or to and I can show you some tabloids. There's plenty out there, but we try to keep it very objective and newsworthy.
8:42 on the Need to Know Morning Show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Matt Von Panan. We'll ask him about the two Fargo high school students who had protested their inability to have a club in their high schools for pro-life reasons, and how that was depicted in the forum as well. More with Matt Von Panan when we return on the Need to Know Morning Show on AM 1100 The Flag.